kill it. I was meant to win. I am down and willing, so I will find a way. It took a minute, now it didn't happen right away. When it get hot in the kitchen, you decide to stay. That's how we winners made. Stick a fork in the hater on my dinner plate. I walk into the fire like it's just a bit of flames. I switch my style up, watch the money pile up. I'ma get rich or die trying, want me switch lanes. I'm always getting better, I'ma be on 5th place. On this one, then 4th on the next. 3rd, 2nd, 1st, she a poor best. She showing love.
From guns and glory to glitz and glamour, the G has seen it all. And now as it enters a world of electric and silence, it still stands out loud and proud. Loud because even though this G does away with an engine and exhaust, it still carries the same iconic design that makes everyone take notice, especially in this very special shade of blue. If you see it whiz past your window, you won't be able to tell if it is the electric version. The changes are far too subtle. Get a micrometer and a magnifying glass and you'll notice a partially raised hood, a new A-pillar design, bumpers with different air intakes, air curtains all around, and of course the number plate is green. Everything else is classic G. The round headlamps, chunky indicators and upright windshield retain the OG look. But yes, you do miss out on the more closed-off grille that also gets DRL surrounding it like the international version. Over to the side, the only missing bits are the exhaust poking out as you have on the G63. The length and wheelbase are the same, while the ground clearance at 250mm is more than the G63. The blacked out 20-inch wheels though are big but look unassuming. Some expect the rear to look different courtesy the boxy charging case, but for India the G580 will not get that option, and as a result a very handy spare wheel completes the look. However, standing still is not the G's best pose. Take it off-roading to somewhere like the challenging and controlled terrain of Learn Off-Road in Pali and you can see it's not all show and no go. Like the ICE version, the G580 also features independent front suspension and a rigid axle at the rear, and the approach, breakover and departure angles are excellent. We started by checking the lean angle on the side slope and how far we can push it. Oh my god, this is incredible. It's more about putting faith in the car than yourself, because it's not every day that you see the world from this angle. The wall is right here. Okay, sorry, I don't want to lose focus. The best part is just how effortless it is. Just makes you feel like you are a massive off-road expert. I mean, the windshield angle right now is absurd. So I can only imagine what it looks like from the outside. The G580 is good for inclined angles as steep as 35 degrees, equivalent to 70% gradient. Next up was the test of the dramatic wheel articulation. Okay, this is the wheel articulation. Again, you worry about grazing a 3 crore rupee SUV, but easy does it. Wait for the dip, just control the brake. You don't have to do much with the throttle, to be honest. The low range does it all for you. The low range gear integrated within each motor multiplies the torque in low speed applications and avoids heating up the motors that are spinning at high speeds. Keep the steering straight. It might go against your instincts, but the last thing you want is the sound of rocks grazing at underbody. Slight correction. And always unnerving, rocking about in a G. Now at this point you're probably thinking, isn't it risky to off-road with a battery pack under the car? Well, not really. Now, why you shouldn't be worried about the battery hitting anything is right here. I'll need a stick to demonstrate this. What you see, if you bend down a fair bit, is a massive plate protecting the battery. Now this plate
could have been a steel plate, a nice thick one, but that would have weighed 200 kgs. 200 kgs adding to a car that's already over 3 tons. That's obviously not feasible. So what they've done instead, it's a blend of materials, carbon weaved with some plastic and some other bits. And what that has done is brought the weight down to 57 kgs. But at the same time, it can protect up to 6 times its own weight. So Mercedes engineers have actually thrashed this car, actually tried hitting boulders on it to see if it actually penetrates and damages the battery. So what we are doing here is barely anything. So you need not worry about the damage down here.
The battery integrated into the modified ladder frame ensures a low center of gravity and makes the entire vehicle significantly more rigid. To protect it from dirt intrusion, the battery is also housed in a torsion-resistant casing, and of course it is waterproof and allows the electric G to go water wading up to 850 mm. That's 150 mm more than the ICE version.
Alright, so we're going to do a bit of a trail now, slightly more challenging. Lots of dips, lots of climbs, but the good part is this has over 1100 Newton meters.
But crucially, apart from the bundles of torque, it also has the intelligent crawl feature, which turns on automatically in 4-low and manages the G580's speed and torque vectoring. Basically avoids wheel spin and controls the power, so you don't have to modulate the accelerator and you can focus on the driving line. Now coming to the exclusive features, starting with the G-turn, which is a big help through a narrow and tight section.
Okay, so we have a tight left-hander now, and this is exactly where you might need the G steering. What that does basically is lock up the rear wheel. But first, let me just see if I actually need it or no. And by the looks of it, I think I am going to. Yep. So I'm going to need that. It is a bit of a process for that. So car's in neutral, it's in rock mode, it's in low range. Okay, select drive. Then select the G steering. And then basically give it full lock and a bit of throttle. So what that will do is lock up the inner wheel, and the car basically pivots around itself. So the turning radius is much better. And what could have been a 3 or even 5-point turn is now just a simple left-hander.
But out of all these clever features, there is one that absolutely stands out.
Alright, so the party trick on the G580, the electric G, it's been the talk of the town, it's been raging all over the internet, the G-turn. So how do you engage it? Well, first, obviously switch on the car and go into drive modes and select rock mode. It'll give you a prompt, activate drive program, press that. So the car is in rock mode now. After that, go into neutral. Once in neutral, press low range. You have to be in low range for this. And then you engage the G-turn button. It says G-turn, engage. Press drive, and then you select which side you want the car to turn. Hold that pedal. If you want to turn it anti-clockwise, hold the left. If you want to turn it clockwise, hold the right, and just press the accelerator then.
The virtual differentials that allow each wheel to have its own mind can spin the outside wheels in one direction while the insides spin in the other. You might argue why spin twice in the same place, but it can be helpful if you want to dig yourself out and clear out some muck. But of course you can always stop the G-turn in whichever direction you want by just letting go of the paddle shifter. There simply is nothing like it, and it's also a lot more useful and not a gimmick by any means.
Now on the inside of the G580, it's the same story as on the outside. Things that you've seen for years now have been continued, and that's not a bad thing. We like that tough look that the interior of a G-Class has, and in that fashion, nothing really has changed. Of course, you get the two 12.3-inch screens now with MBUX like you get on the G63. So buttons down here are to control the system. Up here, you have your basic functions like the map, radio, media, and the toggle switches, but you also have your EQ button that gives you an update on your battery capacity, what's happening with the consumption, your range. Of course, the instrument cluster also can be customized to, again, get more range and battery information. You have these AC vents, circular, very nice to the touch, metallic. They have a reassuring click as well. You have physical buttons for the climate control. That is a rarity in this day and age. You have a nice small sunroof as well, not a panoramic sunroof, but that's all right. You get a good amount of light into the cabin. Now, while the vents and the AC controls are borrowed from the G63, what is changed on the G580 is this center switchgear. Now, traditionally, you would have your diff lock settings right here, but on this one, you get low range, of course, in the center. You get the famous G turn on the right hand side and the G steering on the left hand side. Below that, you have your traction control switches, your camera. That means it gives you a transparency mode. The bonnet basically becomes transparent and you can see what's ahead and even what's under your car as you're driving. Very helpful during off-road situations. And speaking of off-road, you have this big off-road cockpit button that gives you all your off-road data, your lean and pitch angles, what the steering is doing. So a lot that is crammed in here and a lot that is very useful as well. And because this is the edition 1, you get that blue stitching in everything. So you have the blue stitching in the seats, you get blue stitching weaved into the carbon fiber as well, and that you see on the panels around the touchscreen on this bottom center console panel. So not that typical piano black look, it's a nice sporty design. And then of course the steering, lots of buttons. In fact, you do end up accidentally hitting a lot of them, so it does take some time to get used to. You need to stray away from them. When you're driving, it can get a bit cumbersome. And overall, the feel is that of a big, tough SUV. You're seated nice and high. You've got a theater view to the outside world. You can hi-fi truck drivers. It is that high. And that means getting into this car is a bit of a jump. You have to step in using the footboard and then hurl yourself in. And once you're in here, you are the king of the world. Road presence is something that you can feel when you drive this car, and that is just amazing. Now, if you're wondering what the backseat of the G580 is like, why are you wondering? Because obviously this is not the place to be. First thing is getting inside. It is quite a bit of a climb even with the footboard. There's no real grab rail, so nothing to hold on. Take the headrest and basically hurl yourself inside. Now, once you're in, space is not too bad, but this seat is not the plushest seat you can buy at this price point. There are many seats in the Mercedes lineup for much lesser that are a lot more comfortable. Again, in terms of amenities, you don't really miss out on much. You get vents in the center, vents in the pillars, 3-zone climate control. So you have your individual climate control in the back, 2 Type-C ports, some space behind the seats. Seats are nice and scooped out as well. So again, space is not really that big of an issue. You do miss out on sunblinds though, and these seats are heated, not cooled. Now, in this climate today, it's not going to be useful, but I'm sure up north when you go for expeditions in the snow, then they can come in handy. You have a center armrest as well, 2 big cup holders. So decently practical, nice flat floor as well. But I don't know how many people will actually love sitting back here. With a G-Class, you always want to be in the driver's seat.
What's impressive is that despite carrying a massive battery pack, it's not like the practicality has been compromised. Yes, there is no frunk under the bonnet, but the boot is almost as large as the ICE version. Of course, there's a slight raise in the boot floor, but that can easily be forgiven. And this practicality is a result of how smartly the G580 has been packaged. As we saw earlier, the battery pack is sandwiched between the ladder frame, and since there is no need for any transmission shafts or differentials, there is a good amount of room for the battery bed.
And while the packaging of that battery is amazing, what it puts out is equally good. 116 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery that's liquid-cooled, putting out 587 horsepower and over 1100 Newton meters of torque. And you might say 1100 Newton meters, that's going to absolutely just destroy the tires. It's going to keep spinning everywhere. Well, not really, because when you have that much torque, there is a reason, and the reason on this car is because it weighs over 3 tons. With a 3085 kilogram curb weight, it needs that torque. And it's not like because there is so much weight, the torque is just adequate. It is plenty. Foot down, it will throw you back in your seat. Now, it's got that off-the-line response that you have on EVs and all that colossal torque going to all 4 wheels instantly. That is quite something, but it doesn't really shock the system. You know, it's even if you put your foot hard down, there is a sense of linearity to the whole thing. It's really rapid in even comfort mode, but switch to sport and the response is absolutely tremendous. So good in fact that it can pass off as a proper AMG. And speaking of passing off as an AMG, it also has a bit of a fake sound in here. It mimics the actual V8. There's a faint murmur on startup, but if you switch to sport, it does have a bit of that growl. In fact, you can enhance the audio in the settings. You can go in there, but to be honest, it is nowhere near the growl you have with a proper AMG V8. Nothing like you get with the G63. It's like the sound of the G63 engine, but with its mouth taped shut. It's trying to scream, but it's not really getting through.
The 4-motor setup allows the G580 to accelerate from 0 to 100 kph in just 5 seconds. But more importantly, the kickdown times are astonishingly quick for its weight. The motors are paired between the front and rear axle, and the casing is bolted directly onto the ladder frame. They send power to each wheel via the half shafts, and if that is all confusing, in a nutshell, it is bloody quick.
Now, apart from the comfort and sport mode, there is also the individual mode in which you can customize the settings. You can change the suspension tune, you can change the steering, and of course, the response from the motor.
In terms of a transmission, the G580 has 4, one per motor with a high range and a low range. Again, sounds complicated.
But to be honest, you never really feel the difference. It is all so seamless and so very smooth. And you have the paddle shifters at the back. Now, paddle shifters, they're actually Regen paddles on this car. 4 levels, from no Regen to normal to strong to maximum. And maximum really is like dropping the anchor. The whole car dive bombs, so it's best used in traffic situations, in city situations. On the highway, you can keep it at normal, and strong again for crowded places. Now, while we are on the topic of Regen, Mercedes claims over 400 kilometers with this car, but honestly, real world numbers hover around the 350 to 380 kilometers. Now, we started this drive in the morning with 100% of charge. Range showing then was 416. And through the day, we've done a lot of highway driving, a lot of trail driving as well. So average speed is around 28 to 30 kph.
And by the end of the drive, the efficiency achieved was 2.89 kilometers per kilowatt hour, resulting in a range of 336 kilometers. After 245 kilometers of driving, which included some proper off-roading, lots of highway cruising and some city bits, it's actually not too bad.
At 3 crore rupees, the G580 is 65 lakh rupees less than the G63. And to be honest, it does everything that the G63 does, and in some cases even does it better. Yes, of course, you miss that brutish V8, you miss the pops and bangs, but that is a small price to pay. Because in a future that did not look kind to icons like the G, this right here is 3.1 ton of proof that as long as the 3-pointed star goes on, the G will continue to go on.